I'm back with another movie-related potted history, which is basically just a thinly veiled justification for my own personal tastes and belief. This week, the belief that special effects peaked with Jurassic Park in 1993 and have largely died a death since being replaced by CGI. Now, to make this point, we have to understand what a special effect is and why CGI isn't one. So let's ask that question. What is a special effect? Special effects are visual tricks or techniques used in visual mediums such as film and theatre to create the illusion that something is happening that isn't really happening because it is impossible or impractical to do for real. You don't want to actually shoot and kill someone for a movie. Is it too early to make an Alec Baldwin joke here? Let me know in the comments. They come in two forms mainly. Mechanical effects, otherwise known as practical effects, are effects that are achieved in camera. These run the gamut from prosthetics to models to pyrotechnics, and creating fake weather conditions on set and in camera, plus a whole load of other potential mechanical effects, such as having giant hydraulic sets that move, etc. These are photographic illusions that create the appearance of two or more disparate elements appearing on screen at once. They can be created either with in-camera work or via post-production techniques. Examples of such effects would include double exposures, green screens, composite images, forced perspectives and the use of optical printers. Notice I haven't mentioned CGI. That would be because it isn't a special effect. It is in fact a digital visual effect. The difference between a visual effect and a special effect seems to just be when they happen. VFX happen post-production and SFX happen on set during production. Now that distinction is as clear as mud. Let's begin our potted history of special effects with the very first one. The very first special effect in a movie was in 1895 and recreated the execution of Mary Queen of Scots. Here it is in all its glory. It should be fairly obvious how the director Alfred Clark achieved this trick, but if it isn't, this is what is known as a stop trick, where the illusion is achieved by having an actress perform the walking up to the block and the axeman raise his axe, then pausing in place, stopping the camera, replace the actress with a dummy, and then chop the dummy's head off. The stop trick was the first photographic illusion to also only be possible in a moving picture. George Méliès, who probably deserves his own video all of his own to be honest, also discovered the stop trick by accident after filming a street scene in Paris. After his camera jammed, and this caused a truck to turn into a hearse, people to change direction, and men to turn into women, much to the amusement of his audience. Between 1896 and 1913, Méliès produced over 500 short films, with his early films essentially being visual tricks that enhanced his on-stage magical tricks he was already performing prior to movies, with no or little plot being attached to these. With his films over time getting ever more complex and ambitious, he invented many special effects we still use today, including reverse shots where he hand-cranked the film backwards through his camera, double exposures where he would film actors against a black background and then crank the film back through the camera before exposing it again to create a new double exposed image. He also invented time-lapse photography, dissolves, and hand-painted colour frames. His most famous work, La Voyage dans la Lune from 1902, combines all these effects with animation, miniatures and matte paintings to create a parody of Jules Verne's novel From the Earth to the Moon. The effects in this movie are obviously incredibly dated, but even by 1902, there are effects here we would be very familiar with. even if they create something that in 2022 looks less like a movie and more like an elaborate stage play. One last note on George Méliès. For around 2 decades, he was amongst the world's foremost filmmakers before he was bankrupted, largely by piracy. Who was doing the piracy, I hear you asking, seeing as the internet didn't exist? Turns out it was the very people who bitch and moan the most about piracy now. Yeah, American film studios. They just straight up pirated his films, claimed them for themselves, and stole the profits. Also, World War I and his brother making some spectacularly bad financial decisions didn't help. But mainly, it was the Americans pirating his films, if you ask me. The 1910s saw many improvements in special effects, especially around the techniques used for matte shots. Originally, matte shots were achieved by blocking portions of a film's exposure with pieces of cardboard before removing them and re-exposing the film at a later date. Norman Dorn refined this process with the glass shot by simply painting areas of the lens black, then taking a single frame of the partially exposed film and projecting it onto a canvas. This allowed matte paintings to be easily created in the correct perspective and scale. In 1916, the first travelling matte system was invented by Frank Williams, and this later developed into blue and green screens. The 1920s largely saw a refinement and improvement in the techniques previously used in filmmaking, with the Germans dominating, with notable milestones being wires being used in The Thief of Baghdad to create the flying carpet in 1924, and the first ever credit for special effect being the Fox-produced What Price Glory in 1926. The creation of the Shuftan process during the filming of Fritz Lang's masterpiece Metropolis in 1927 combined live-action actors, full-size sets and miniatures using mirrors in camera, giving the city a wonderful massive scale that would have been impossible otherwise due to cost and the sheer logistics of building a life-size metropolis. This effect was later used extensively by Hitchcock and as late as the Lord of the Rings films by Peter Jackson. The 1930s saw most major studios create in-house special effects departments that were responsible for all aspects of SFX within their studios. This decade saw further refinement of matte paintings, compositing and miniatures, with the development of rear projection, substituting paintings for moving pictures, which created moving backgrounds for the first time. Stop motion also saw major leaps forward with the 1933 film King Kong. We also, at the end of the decade in 1939, got the very first Academy Award for special effects, going to The Rains Came for A Fantastical Flood, beating out Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz. I'd argue the 1930s are when we get what we, 90 years later, would recognise as still watchable and enjoyable special effects laden movies. The next 50 years is mainly a period of refinement rather than innovation in special effects. During the 40s, the use of advanced optical printing, a technology which had existed since the 1920s but was more or less perfected during World War II, allowed filmmakers to more accurately combine and re-photograph strips of film, leading to more impressive composite shots involving more elements such as can be seen in Citizen Kane, especially ones involving Xanadu. The 50s saw a boom in sci-fi and various techniques were produced to make these new alien worlds the genre demanded possible. These included films all being in colour, which allowed the use of blue screens and the sodium vapour process, which made such films as The Ten Commandments possible, where the Red Sea was split using a combination of blue screens and water tanks, a special effect that still largely holds up even now. New innovations such as 3D came along in this decade, with other cinematic formats such as CinemaScope, VistaVision and Cinerama. Early motion control was also invented, meaning that precise camera movements could be repeated, helping to refine compositing even further. At this point, a real theme is emerging, one which continues into the 1960s, where fewer techniques are invented but old ones are perfected. This culminated in Stanley Kubrick's 1968 special effect extravaganza 2001: A Space Odyssey, which essentially combines the prior 50 years of special effects techniques into one film, all whilst doing them way better than anyone else had ever managed, plus using a couple new ones like front projection and slit scan technology. The 1970s saw two seismic shifts in the world of special effects. The first was economic. The studios closed down their in-house effects departments, forcing most special effects work to become freelanced and out of house. The second was the massive success of Star Wars and the introduction of computer-controlled cameras, giving for the first time true motion control, allowing for far more impressive miniature work and compositing via travelling matte techniques such as green screen. The 80s saw the beginning of the end for special effects, with no new major techniques or refinements, but we did get the first ever all-digital CG sequence in Star Trek Wrath of Khan. I knew there was a reason I always preferred Star Wars. By 1985 we had the first ever CG character in young Sherlock Holmes. The early 90s saw CGI become far more prevalent, with Terminator 2 having 100 CGI elements that amounted to a whole 5.5 minutes of its runtime, which was a lot for the time, with filmmakers preferring to still use practical and optical effects rather than digital ones to create the world they wanted to convey. But really, the death of special effects as we knew them came with their crowning glory, the release of Jurassic Park in 1993. Everyone remembers Jurassic Park as when CGI blew their little cotton socks off. What really blew their mind was 100 years of special effects being developed and refined, because Jurassic Park only has 63 shots achieved via CGI in its entire runtime. Everything else was achieved due to special effects. Jurassic Park is a masterpiece of the art, maybe the greatest use of effects in film history, but by the late 90s, largely fueled by its success, most films were wall-to-wall CGI fests, and are now as a result almost unwatchable due to the horrendous nature of late 90s CGI. Since then we have had almost zero innovations in special effects, just increasingly large amounts of CGI. For example, the Guardians of the Galaxy has 2,750 computer-generated shots, which amount to 90% of its runtime not even being real. We are watching video game cutscenes, not movies these days. Now it's soapbox time. I don't hate CGI, I just hate that it is so overused and it's become first, second and third choice to solve any effects-based problem. My brain knows none of this is real. It's like watching a video game play out without me being involved in what's actually happening. The entire point of special and visual effects is to trick the audience into believing they are seeing something that isn't actually happening, but CGI doesn't really do that. Our monkey brains know that none of this is in any way, shape or form real, including the people. Give me these blood squibs from RoboCop any day of the week and 3 times on Tuesday. But digital blood squibs, please just stop using them. They look awful and I can barely watch this crap. I'd rather there was no blood than digital blood effects be used. The 80s and 90s especially have so many masterpieces of special effects works because they were the culmination of 100 years of refinement and innovation in that field. Ironically, hitting their peak with Jurassic Park in 1993 was the death knell, because since then they've been replaced by CGI. I know it's a little bit of a forlorn hope, but I hope we can get back to those halcyon days of special effects actually being used rather than digital ones. If you enjoyed that, then like, comment and subscribe, because whilst researching this video I read Fahrenheit 451 and it really pissed on my chips enough that I changed my entire schedule and I'm reviewing the way better movie version Equilibrium. Because good god, the dystopian world in Fahrenheit 451 is awful.